Welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast on PennState.Rivals.com, aka Happy Valley Insider. That's a lot of different names. I'm Richie Schnyderite. I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Callaghan-Croley. Dylan, some big news for Penn State again today. They continue to kill it on the transfer portal. They have landed Florida transfer defensive back Jalen Kimber, who technically was committed to Louisville and was visiting elsewhere, but visited Penn State, and they got him locked up pretty quickly. Just talk a little bit about how this one came together.
Yeah, so this is one that we have been monitoring for the last about 2 weeks or so, I guess it would be here. He did commit to Louisville late last month, but he did not stop visiting other schools, and Penn State did not stop recruiting him. They were able to get him on campus last week. We're recording this the week of January 11th. They got him on campus last week. I think it was I forget which exact day it was, but last week. The visit went well. He ended up visiting Texas A&M over the weekend, but ultimately the Nittany Lions visit was able to secure the deal for Kimber. There was some academic stuff, nothing I'm told that was overly concerning, but I believe he technically did not yet graduate from Florida, which causes some issues sometimes when transferring with credits, of course. So there were some things to work out there, but he got on campus this week. Everything is good to go with Kimber now that it's official that he's an Nittany Lion.
So let me ask you this: since he is a transfer and a two-time transfer, because he started out his career at Georgia for his first 2 seasons before going to Florida for 2 more seasons. I know you said there was something with his graduation. Is he a grad transfer? Is he going to be eligible immediately?
Yeah, he'll be immediately eligible. Worth noting that last month the NCAA passed technically a waiver or whatever it was, but for at least right now, 2 second-time transfers can be immediately eligible to play at their next school. So Kimber will be eligible to play immediately for the Nittany Lions this upcoming season, and we'll see where he ultimately fits in. They obviously picked up A.J. Harris recently. They have Cam Miller there as well, who probably projects to be a starter right now. Perhaps Kimber starts for the Nittany Lions 2024, but he's going to be part of the main rotation of defensive backs or quarterbacks, I should say, for the Nittany Lions either way in 2024. Harris, I assume, is going to step into more of an immediate starting role, while Kimber may be more of that first guy off the bench per se. But it's a big pickup for Penn State. They obviously lost a lot in that secondary, losing Daquan Hardy, Kalen King, and of course Johnny Dixon this offseason. So you gain 2 corners back in the portal. You have talent there as well. So I think this is a big success for James Franklin and Terry Smith to be able to go out and get 2 guys who are going to make an impact in 2024. Help shore up that secondary, because I'm not sure if anybody noticed, but the Big Ten has added some quarterbacks to the fold here this offseason. Obviously not going to play Oregon, but Oregon picked up Dylan Gabriel. Washington has
Will
Rogers. Ohio State has Will Howard. USC, we'll see who Miller Moss probably was the starter, but they picked up the UNLV transfer.
Yeah,
and we'll see who's the quarterback at Michigan next year, because that still has to be decided depending on what JJ McCarthy decides to do. So a lot of new quarterbacks in the Big Ten next year. And Penn State secondary is going to need to be ready to play after losing those 3 guys. And I think they will be, especially after adding Harris and Kimber here in the last few days.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a lot of new faces, new offenses in the Big Ten next season. Specifically, going back to Kimber, I'm kind of intrigued by this because you said, I actually just speculated, just going based on the fact that he started 11 games for Florida last year, that he would start for Penn State. But you think Harris is going to start over him?
Yeah, I would say probably I would lean Harris, but perhaps Kimber does start. My I wouldn't say issues with Kimber, but my hesitancy to say right now he would be a starter is there were struggles for him last year. You look over at Pro Football Focus here. He had a 71.3 coverage grade, which is pretty good. But you look a little bit deeper on the numbers. He allowed 20 receptions, 35 yards, 20 receptions on 35 targets, 381 yards, which was, I think, second most, third most on the Florida team. The other numbers were 412 and 387, so pretty close. But he also allowed 3 touchdowns, had 5 pass breakups, no interceptions, but there were struggles throughout the year for him. I'm told after talking to some people familiar with Florida, he could absolutely come in and start, but I'm not sure I'm ready to say right now that he's going to be a bona fide starter. Like I said, if not, he's going to be the first off the bench. But yeah, he'll compete with Cam Miller or AJ Harris for a starting role. There's no doubt about that. But I'd probably give the edge to Harris right now.
So, interesting offseason for Penn State. They technically went to 2 former 5-stars, but AJ Harris is actually the highest ranked transfer portal guy at number 15 overall per Rivals. Yeah. Just talk a little bit about overall Penn State's haul so far. I mean, between Julian Fleming, former 5-star, Nolan Richie, former 5-star, Chase Meyer, kicker, Jordan Meyer, walk-on, former 3-star, and now AJ Harris. And Jalen Kimber, geez.
Yeah, our own Marty Leap had a story earlier today about Penn State and the transfer portal this offseason. We're going to talk more about this on a future episode as well. But it was a very successful transfer portal window here for Penn State, especially here in the last couple of weeks. You look at the needs they had at wide receiver, at cornerback, offensive tackle, kicker. They were able to go out and answer at each one of those positions. Wide receiver, they picked up Julian Fleming. I still think they need another wide receiver. They were in on LaJohntay Wester. He ends up at Colorado. Academics were I don't want to say an issue as in he had bad grades. I don't know what his grades were like, but there was going to be a little bit more academic hurdles to get over there for Penn State in order to land Wester. He ends up at Colorado instead. For at cornerback, you got AJ Harris, Jalen Kimber to step in. Both are going to be big impact guys for you next year. Offensive tackle, you added Nolan Richie. He's going to be able to step in and compete for a starting job next year. Will he be a starter? We'll see. But that's a big upgrade over, when they did have a commitment from Alan Haran early in the transport before he flipped to Maryland. So, I mean, those are two spots there in which, that's a spot there that Penn State had a quality option in Haran, but upgraded in Richie, somebody who still has a lot of potential and has 2 years to prove it with Penn State. And kicker was a big question mark. Alex Fuckins came in and really solidified that position this year. And then they go out and get Chase Meyer, who was really great for Tulsa this past season. Should be able to come in and provide stability again for Penn State. We'll see what Sandra Sahadak ultimately decides to do after the spring. Will he stay and compete for the job and into the fall? They also have Ryan Barker, who they're high on. And then even out of the portal, like we've said on previous podcasts, sometimes your best additions is really through retention. At Penn State, at the defensive tackle position, retained Devon Ellis and Hakeem Beeman, which is huge. They're going to return pretty much everybody in that defensive tackle room heading into next fall, and that's going to really solidify the middle of that defensive line, which is big because you already are losing, Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac on the ends.
Yeah. Now, looking at the scholarship chart, our unofficial scholarship chart, because we don't actually know the official numbers, they don't release those. But based on everything we know, there are now 98 scholarship players for Penn State. I know it doesn't matter, and a lot of fans don't know this. You don't have to get down to that 85 mark until kickoff versus West Virginia, or the first game of the season, for example. Now, do we think Penn State's done? Because I know today is officially January 11th was the last day for people to add class or students to add classes, I believe, or register for classes.
Yeah. After this upcoming Monday, it probably is would be very hard to add, and don't take that for gospel. I just think it would probably be very hard to add.
I'm just going based off academic calendar. It says today is the last day to add a class.
Yeah. I think it would be very hard for Penn State to add again in this portal window. So for now, I think Penn State's done. But I think in the spring they will probably look to maybe pick up another piece or two. Again, I think wide receiver is the one that we're all paying attention to there.
Mm-hmm.
I
For sure.
I'm just not sure they can go into next season without adding another guy. Now, on a positive side, it looks like Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to, at least for now, return to Penn
Mm-hmm.
State. I think he has uh, a couple days here to declare for the draft, but if he has not yet declared for the draft, I don't know if it's really going to happen. So it looks like he's going to return for Penn State, at least into the spring. And if he's here in the spring, I would assume he's going to be here for the fall. So Penn State, perhaps Lambert Smith shifting back into that number 2 role will benefit him. He was really good as a number 2 for Penn State in the past. Now with Julian Fleming, he could slide back to that spot, and that could be beneficial for him. And I think bringing in Fleming, having Fleming's leadership in that room will be beneficial as well. But if Penn State could add a third guy, it doesn't have to be a starter perhaps, but you need somebody who you can trust at least to put in that rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming that Harrison Wallace third is probably going to be that third starter, at least right now for Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you think about it, join Fleming and Wallace on the outside, and then you are able to, put Keandre Lambert-Smith perhaps in the slot there. That could be a lot to work with for Penn State offensively next year. Both Andy Colts, and Drew. So I still think they need another player in that wide receiver room, but with the addition of Fleming, it's definitely not a panic situation anymore. But I think you need at least one more.
Yeah, no, for sure. So now that deadline for the NFL to file the paperwork and declare is January 15th. However, you can withdraw from the draft up until February 2nd if people or players do change their mind. So that's going to definitely be interesting to monitor, especially with Keandre Lambert-Smith, like you mentioned. Other than that, I think there's nothing super important. I don't want to talk about too much about Junior Day recruiting. We do have a good list that's already started up on our boards. Plenty of articles are going to be out over the next couple of days. That they're hosting guys on January 20th, 27th, February 3rd. So it's going to be multiple Junior Days. Nothing new. It's pretty much the ordinary. A lot of big name prospects, 4 stars, 5 stars, highly ranked 3 stars who are probably going to be 4 stars by the time the cycle's over with. But I do want to touch on one thing before we sign off today.
Yep.
Alabama head coach Nick Saban has officially retired. Very interesting, very crazy news that came out of nowhere, to be honest.
Yeah, crazy day. Now, crazy last 24 hours. Coaching
one of the biggest questions on our boards and on social media has been: is Penn State going to target any Alabama players or recruits? Looking at the roster, there's 2 New Jersey guys. I don't think they target either of them in Jahad Campbell, and I'm forgetting who else. Oh, yeah, Kyle Fudd Jr. Now, I don't think they target either of them, but there is a Pennsylvania commit in the 2024 class for Alabama currently, or I shouldn't say commit, a signee now, but can leave if he probably wants to because of the coaching change in Rico Scott. Do you think Penn State ends up reaching out at all?
Yeah, I absolutely think there's a chance. I'm not gonna sit here and say I know for sure that Penn State's gonna reach out, but I think there's if Scott is. I will say I think it probably depends on what happens with the coaching staff in Alabama. I'm blanking on who their current wide receiver coach is. If that wide receiver coach ends up not being retained, which that's the thing. I expect Alabama to move fast on this next head coach, and hopefully Kimber announced his commitment rather soon to when we recorded this podcast. Doing a little bit of pre-recording behind the scenes action right there for everybody. But as we're recording right now, Alabama's still in that search very early on. It's now being reported that Dan Lanning is not going to be the head coach at Alabama. So I wonder how long that process is going to take. But I do feel whoever takes the job is going to have tough decisions to make between bringing their staff versus who has that Alabama staff, because not only is it going to be a mad dash for getting players out of that Alabama system Alabama program who decide to enter the transfer portal, it's going to be a mad dash to get coaches off that coaching staff as well. Um, but there, no matter what, there's going to be coaches here who are good coaches without jobs. But when it goes back to Rico Scott, if he decides to enter the transfer portal, because I think he now officially has to enter the transfer portal since he's signed. Though I'm not sure if he enrolled yet.
No, I believe they're allowed to get out of their commitment and signee if they want.
Okay.
But if he did enroll, I guess that's the big issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he enrolled yet. That would be something to check out. But if he decides to reopen things, sure, I wouldn't be shocked if they would push. They were definitely, in on him last cycle. There are some questions I think about him from everybody, but obviously he had a really good offer sheet, and that's a room that we've been very clear about has not been good for Penn State in the past, and I think he certainly has potential. They were, still talking to him last time I checked later in the cycle, but he was very committed to Nick Saban and Alabama. So I think right now a little bit too early to tell, just because we're not sure what Rico Scott's going to do. But if he does open that discussion back up, I would not be shocked to hear Penn State's name brought up in those discussions.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting little timeline here, because it sounded like they wanted to get that hire done quickly, and now it sounds like it's kind of backfiring a little bit. It sounds like Sarkisian might have said no. Sounds like that's a rumor, obviously. Sounds like Lanning is going to stay in Oregon.
Yeah, Lanning just announced on Twitter that he is, or X, that he is staying at Oregon.
So it's going to be very interesting to see where they go. Kind of going with that theme, is there any chance we had to worry about James Franklin leaving, because he was mentioned by Thamel? Then the second tweet where it was talking about buyouts, he wasn't mentioned, but then Thamel edited it and then added him. So it's like, no
offense to Pete on this one, because everybody knows Pete is the Adrian Wojnarowski of college football. I have a feeling that may have been Jimmy Sexton. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure all those coaches were Jimmy Sexton clients, if not a majority of them. So I think that may have been Jimmy Sexton in Pete Thamel's ear. But no, I don't think. Could Alabama eventually target James Franklin if a couple other coaches say no? Yeah. Do I think it's going to come down to that? I do not. I think somebody will eventually take the job. Now, I mean, at the same time, do you want to be the guy who has to follow up Nick Saban in Alabama?
Nope.
Because the first time you don't win 10 games, you're getting fired.
Well, hold on. James Franklin's pretty good at winning 10 games. He just can't get
that is true. I do think that James Franklin at a place like Alabama would be a very, very good coach and would have very good success, chance to win a national championship there. I still think that's possible at Penn State, though. It would definitely take a little bit more I don't want to say luck, but Alabama has more resources, obviously, at their disposal than a Penn State does. But it's still possible here at Penn State as well. But right now, no, I would say I would not be worried if you're a Penn State fan about James Franklin eventually potentially going to Alabama, though I know that some people may be hoping for that instead. But right now, I would say no, that is not on my list of things that I'm going to be thinking about over the next few days. Now, we weren't going to mention Junior Day news, but there was one that just got reported on
real quick before we go to Junior Day stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think he can parlay this into another extension potentially, or a restructure of more money or whatever? I know it's a new AD, so it's a little different this time around. It does sound like they have a little love fest for each other.
I think only if his name continues to pop up. If it's only the one-off by Thamel, I don't think so. But it'll be interesting. Will Penn State offer him an extension? He obviously just got that, or offer him more money. He obviously got that big extension just, what was that, last year? 2 years ago.
I forget.
All these years, as everybody said, since COVID, all the years kind of have been meshing together. But Junior Day news just announced on X by himself. Trent Wilson, one of Penn State's top defensive line targets in the class of 2025, will be on campus January 20th. So he'll be added to our junior day list over on Happy Valley Insider, PennState.Rivals.com. Be sure to go over there and check out that full list. It is going to continue to grow over the next days and weeks. Like we said, Penn State has at least 2 official junior days, and I think there's an unofficial junior day in for one of those dates. But Penn State's putting together quite a visitors list overall over the next couple of weeks. And Trent Wilson is a big addition, somebody that Penn State's going to be pushing for, I think, pretty hard in this 2025 cycle, have already been doing so. And yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of recruiting news in the 2025 cycle here over the next few weeks with these visits. And then right after junior days, you think about it, we got a short, quiet time there in March, but then in April, everything's going to start picking up again with the spring games. Then starting again in May, we're talking previewing official visit schedules, and then we're in official visit season, and then it's football season again. And so back. Before you know it, we're going to be into the summer with official visits and football season's back. But I will admittedly say I'm going to enjoy the next couple weeks of college football kind of being over because while we love our jobs working in college football, as the season gets closer to the end, it certainly does get a little bit. The days get longer, in a sense.
Definitely a little bit, for sure. At the very least, it's nice to have a little bit of a break because portal is calming down. Football season not starting again until spring, like you said. But if you aren't already, before we sign off, if you aren't already subscribe to us on YouTube. It helps us grow the pod, helps us grow the site, helps us get more Penn State coverage out to you guys too. So also check us out on any of your podcasting apps, whether it be Spotify, Apple Pods, Google, etc. And if you can, just take a couple minutes, give us a review. Help us get more reviews, more 5-star ratings. The more ratings we have, the more we can grow the pod, the more we can do stuff like this. And other than that, that's really it for me and Dylan. If you haven't already, check us out on PennState.Rivals.com. We have a promo going on right now. HVI 30 gets you a free 30-day trial for the site. And that's pretty much it. But for me and Dylan, that's another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Jeez, signing off.